So let's start with, this will be sort of a lightning round report out on challenges. We did cover a bunch of challenges already, I think, but if anything new came up, let's shout them out. With time challenges.
Yeah, so our topic was time. And so in an effort to appropriately manage our time, we actually did that assignment before. So actually, I've just been sitting here doing emails, so just so you know. So let me see, the challenge right now is to remember what we were actually talking about before. So, sorry, this is their comedy interlude. So obviously one of the big challenges with time is a finite resource, right? I mean, we talked a little bit under successes is if you have capital, you can buy assistance, and so that might help you leverage some time. But fundamentally, at the end of the day, nobody's going to do a research project and discover suddenly that we have a 30-hour day, right? So time is a finite resource. Time is money, right? And so if any time a farmer is spending something on food safety, that's not necessarily value added for them. I mean, how do you evaluate the cost of, well, I didn't cause an outbreak today, right? That's something that people in the food industry in general struggle with. Another challenge in terms of time is that farms may have labor shortages, and so if you're struggling to find good workers and qualified workers, then obviously you don't have people to delegate to, and so not only are you falling behind on your tasks, but you can't even get the resources to leverage your time better. One thing that we've often heard from farmers, and we've heard it repeated many times throughout this meeting, is that often they perceive the regulatory deadlines as being unrealistic, and so obviously, sometimes we see FDA move, like on the ag water rule, when they get enough of a pushback, but again, for the most part, these deadlines are coming, and folks just have to kind of deal with them. And then again, we also talked about one of the ways of leveraging time is delegation, but of course, I'm sure you've all had the experience of delegating something to someone which freed up your time until you had to go and fix all the mistakes that they made when you delegated the work to them. So one of the challenges with time management is delegation or improper delegation, or figuring out those delegation skills to appropriately leverage your time.
Thanks, Don. Other real quick thoughts, additional challenges related to time? And we are limited on time. So
I'm almost wishing we had flipped these so we could have talked about the problem first and then
I was
the
wondering
solution.
about that too.
Sorry.
Here we are.
Yeah.
So one of the first things, which I guess is related to time, is having to do with training, is the training is out there is 1 day, and of course Rhode Island does it in 2, and I think most people do feel constrained by the 1 day format for the most part, because it limits discussions, it limits innovation, it limits and how folks tend to be creative and wonderful given that short time span is just amazing. The other thing related to challenges related to training, so in all the years that I've been involved, I've never seen an FDA rule to come out as final and to be pulled back again and pulled back again and again and again. And so our problem is we train to the rule as it exists now, knowing full well it's going to change. And that's really frustrating to the trainers and really frustrating to the students, because we have to tell them, well, this is how it is now. Come back in 6 months and then we'll tell you what it is then. So in answering the problem of water, in trying to confront the problem of biological soil amendments, we having problems telling them where they need to go and what they need to do, and we've just given them our best guess and going with what's in place now, which is very frustrating for everybody. The folks here, sort of the once and done training, because things have been changing so much. Do we need a refresher? Is there somebody out there to put together something that does updates of some sort to help some of these people to bring them back to what, to where it is currently? Is a problem, and we talked a little bit maybe about some sort of recertification, a couple hour recertification, sort of like manager certification in this regard. And finally is, I think what we've come to realize is that the training needs are always evolving, and it's like that in everything, but right now it's particularly problematic for produce because we just don't know where it's going to be next year.
I just wanted to add to that what I think is something that will never become clear with the rule. I don't think the rule is ever going to become particularly more prescriptive, and I think what is a training challenge is trying to get people to understand the level of risk that they are comfortable with on their own farm, and putting on that lens, like, there's never going to be a time where things are much clearer than they are now when you talk about adequate sanitary quality and stuff. They're going to have to assess that on their own, and I think that is a real training challenge for me to try and convey to people how to appropriately make that decision for themselves.
Not 100% clear and not 0% risk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other training challenges? Yep. This is me sprinting.
Yeah. Just to offer another perspective on the 1 to 2 day training. I think the 2 day training, like Lori said, is really valuable. You have that conversation. At lunchtime, you get to sit down and have a conversation with the growers in your state. Just on the flip side of that too, one of the challenges is we have farmers that are going to other states to do a 1 day training. So that's just something to think about. I don't know if standardizing it being a 1 day or a 2 day training is the way to go, or to allow it to be, some states do 1, some states do 2, to make it so farmers can, fit their needs so they're getting the training. But with, farmers skipping out of town, we're not getting that face to face. We're not, when the smaller farmers are coming in, we're not getting to meet them and having that initial contact with them, which is, we're finding very valuable.
Thanks. Other examples of challenges related to training? We talked a lot about worker training yesterday as well, which get rolled into this. Capital?
Capital. So some of the challenges are with what Anita was speaking to with the consultants. It's only $25 for the PSA training, so talking to these farmers and convincing them they don't need to go the route of getting a consultant, because it is doable, something like that. Knowing how we talked about the programs that are available, the national programs and the loans and things like that, getting the word out on that. I know some by us, there's like water issues, there's older wells, things like that. So, drilling a new well is quite expensive, so kind of guiding them there and seeing what they can do about that.
Other challenges related to capital? Knowledge?
We talked about the knowledge challenge of just the regulatory landscape and legality for farmers.
We talked a lot too about some confusion with people who are exempt from the rule, and then also some confusion people have between what they're being told in their audits versus their inspections, which I think we talked to a little bit in the work group yesterday and today, as well as differences you hear between conflicting opinions from inspectors and people. I think they should have the needs assessment as well. I don't know if you have
just understanding the difference between GAP, third-party certification. I know there's one Amish farmer that they're organic, they're third-party certified, and they think, well, we don't need FISM and stuff, that type of thing.
Anything else?
Also came up as like I don't know, for me it related back to a lot of the things of like the definition of a farm, definition of food, definition of being exempt from this rule. If you're exempt, but that's still legally.
I feel like just in writing this literature review, I wanted a glossary of acronyms at least, but definitions. Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, mindset challenges. No, I'm all set.
So the challenges that we identified related to mindset is a couple of things we talked about, and that could also be successes if you leverage them in important ways. So number one challenge is when you have that snarky farmer in a training, or you're encountering people who are throw up barriers, right? So that's a challenge. Another challenge is when people come in with a fear of the unknown and not knowing what they actually don't know. So that's a challenge related to mindset because they can't see where they fit in the landscape of all these things. A challenge that we spoke about in the successes also is that the benefits of changing or it takes a long time to change a mindset. So the fact that food safety benefits are longer term is a challenge to changing mindset. A couple other things that we touched on for challenges is that we've heard a couple of the times when we start out food safety trainings that there's a lack of concern from the farmers based on their perception that historic food safety outbreaks in their commodity haven't happened, so why do they have to worry about food safety, right? And then also in these trainings, we've just have anecdotal evidence like that there are mindset challenges with respect to different generations who might be in the room, and also the age of the operation, where we're seeing operations that are just getting out, just getting started, are already kind of on board with the mindset. It's harder to get people who have been doing what they're doing for a long time to change their mindset. So yeah, we also came up with a couple of ways to address this. If this is the time now to talk about that. Okay. So with regarding to the fear of the unknown and not knowing what you do, we thought that checklists would be a great way to address that and something that we could pass out to kind of ground people in where they are and where they're going in a specific training that you're having. As we talked about around the room, getting people in the room to do plan building really helps. And selling food safety as a long-term investment can also help the challenge of the challenge that it's a long-term thing.
Thanks, Angela. Indu?
I just want to add to that, the snarky farmer that you talked about. We get quite a few of those. And one way that Connecticut does, I guess this could be considered as a success for training, but one thing that Connecticut does is we include a farmer itself to deliver the training. So this person has been trained, has gone through the train the trainer program, and the farmer itself is right there to address some of these things that, farmers may hesitate to ask, maybe the educators or regulators. So this person makes it really light and can give not just his own example, and that's something that we have seen really helps. So that's probably a success thing that you could add.
Thanks. Other challenges related to mindset?
There's one there. I just wanted to jump in maybe while you bring that. Just to say that age of operation question was something that I considered adding into a factor that influence needs. And I think in the literature review, it kind of falls under the category of farm type. Because, and I didn't talk to you guys about it when we were talking about successes and challenges, but that's definitely a farm type sort of thing. Beginning farmer or,
Someone spoke earlier to the farmers that you can't find, who are kind of like in the void. And I think a lot of those, there's a historical distrust of government and regulations and programs, and specifically amongst farmers of color. So that mindset being able to be broken by having trainers and farmers of color go through these trainings of the trainers, so that they have this familiar face that is also a farmer in the room, could help that mindset be shifted faster.
Thank you. Thoughts on challenges related to mindset or solutions? Keep moving then. Region as right, we've been through all the needs?
yes.
It's challenges related to specific to the region.
So we identified a few challenges. Size is one of them, especially getting our message out to certain areas of the region specifically. That's been an issue in the past. Another one that's pretty region specific is seasonality. Some regions don't have to worry about seasons. We schedule a lot of our training in the off season, which around right now. So one thing we do have to worry about sometimes is weather. We have canceled certain trainings because of bad weather in the past. So that's just another one. The third one, there's a lot of urban centers in our region, so and because of that, there's a lot of markets that growers can sell to, so they can kind of be sort of off the radar and out of the eyes of regulation or other valuable resources that they might not get.
Thanks. I'm going to channel Chris Walsh here for a minute, because one of the things he always brought up, which really was helpful to me, was in our region, and actually in other regions too, but in our region, you know, we have a training curriculum that really is focused on E. coli as the hazard, in terms of, especially in terms of water and soil. And Chris Walsh always points out that, you know, some of his biggest concerns down in the Chesapeake Bay watershed area is not necessarily E. coli, but salmonella. And so I think there are regional influences, maybe other influences about specific hazard types, specific hazards or sources of contamination that I think we need to do a better job identifying and clarifying. Other regional challenges.
Just weather events. Some of them have tornadoes. Some areas are more prone to flooding, things like that.
Another one that goes under regional, since Pennsylvania didn't bring it up, but the Plains Act folks, it's a little bit of cultural / regional, and I know Penn State's doing a great job with training specific for the Amish and Plains Act. We do have some of those up in Maine as well, so it's something that some people might not have to worry about, but it's something that some of us have to. So.
Other challenges specific to the region as an influencing factor. Going to keep us moving then. Market, challenges are related to market.
This was mentioned previously, but to reemphasize it, we have issues with complex operations with grower, buyer, broker, and packers that control the produce at different levels, and who's in charge of the food safety for each one of those. Making buyers aware that you do not get a certificate for FSMA compliance. Language barriers, we've been working with the Asian community and trying to get them into compliance so that they can maintain their markets. And then those requirements far and above FSMA, for example, gaps for potatoes. And then having conflicting inspector messages, particularly with field pack operations.
Inspector or inspector versus audit?
Yes.
Okay. Another example of market requirements exceeding regulatory requirements would be, for example, there's a relatively recent requirement by a large wholesale buyer for HACCP for leafy greens, for example. That's causing some challenges. Other examples? Challenges specific to market as an influencing factor? Yeah, Angela? Sorry.
I think this was mentioned previously, but I just want to capture it on this particular posted board is for market. In Maryland, we have a lot of people who are direct market, but over 500,000, and so they have not been to any trainings, do not do GAP, so they have a huge challenge in multiple different ways.
Other examples? Farm size, specific challenges? Who was that? Sorry. No.
So we probably already talked about a few of these, but large firms, even though they have more resources, it might be more difficult for them to manage those resources. Specifically thinking worker and animal intrusion. You know, small farms may have 5 workers. That's also a challenge for them. But large farms might have 120, 200 workers. It's hard to manage them, making sure that they're all following all the food safety practices. And you know, you're only as strong as your weakest link. Large farms a lot of times do monocrops, so they're more susceptible to weather or pest damage. Smaller farms are diversified, so they might be harder to manage food safety wise. You have a limited space and you might grow 40 or 50 different commodities, so food safety concerns with that, and also cross-contamination on smaller farms. A lot of smaller farms are diversified and will do some vegetables and some animals, so the workers going between those is also a risk. The mindset of a small farm, I'm sure a lot of people have heard, it's not my farm, it's a large factory farm, or it's the retailer, the shipping distribution chain is what's contaminating it, it's not the small farms. And then the small farmers a lot of times don't have prior audit or food safety experience, so that's also a challenge.
Thanks, Mark. Other thoughts on challenges related to farm size as an influencing factor? In the home stretch, appreciate everybody hanging in there. Let's see, farm type challenges.
So one of the things we came up with is that outreach communities are challenged to know everything about a particular commodity or particular practices. I think the example we talked about was onions, and it's just that there's a need for more educational materials out there for the folks that are doing outreach. Another challenge we talked about was farms over-relying on any one entity for all of their information. So expecting a regulator in this specific example we were talking about to do all of the education for the farm, and therefore they're not doing their homework, or perhaps the regulator doesn't have all the information that they're needing, and so just getting folks to understand that there's information out there from a variety of sources. And then another one that I thought of is, and this might be specific to the part of the world that I live in, but I have a number of clients who simply are not living in the digital world. And I'm hearing a lot of positive buzz, little shout out for Andy, a lot of positive buzz about the podcasts. But, you know, how do you then make sure that same quality of information is available to folks who don't really understand what a podcast is or know how to get them to play?
Great, thank you. Lori?
I just think one challenge for farm type is, so the organic farms have these standards that may not meet standards of the rule. I don't know how to reconcile that, or whether the NLP program is going to change, but that's a little bit of a challenge.
Thanks, Lori. Other thoughts on example challenges that are specific to farm type as an influencing factor? Any other general thoughts or ideas that have come up in the past 20 minutes that we didn't capture earlier? Yeah, Wendy?
Thanks. So just back on training, I think there's a gap in terms of, or a challenge, a barrier in terms of actual folks who are doing outreach, knowing where their resources are. And so I think it's easy to forget that it takes time to actually develop your outreach tool, and I'm probably speaking more to regulators here than extension, but knowing what tool, have a toolkit ready to send folks to as a follow-up to an inspection.
Thanks, Wendy. I think Hannah's getting it in her training challenge. Cool. On the way out, on your table, you have a sheet of blue dots and a sheet of red dots. We're gonna do a little dot voting on the way out. We want a blue dot. We're only voting on the needs, to Hobbs' point. there's not a whole lot we can do about the influencing factors perhaps. So we really want to focus on the needs. Blue dots on the need that you feel is the most important in the region. Red dot on the specific item you think we can do the most about. Blue dot on the most important or most relevant to the region. Red dot on what you think we can do the most about. So you can vote basically by sheet. So for example, on time, you could vote just on time or put the dot next to the specific item that you think is most relevant. Everybody. So everybody gets a red dot and a blue dot, and you can vote anywhere on the 5 needs.
Blue is most important, red is what we can do the most about.
Is it one set of dots per person?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, just wanted to double check.
1 red, 1 blue per person. Blue is most important, red is what we can do the most about. Most important to the region.
Are we voting on multiple needs?
No, you get one.
One vote? Wow.